Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 6th season, we are looking at the Avengers. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
I'm Pete Wright, and every minute this movie looks more like Tremors.
Where are the worms? Today we are talking about Minute 11, which begins with the end of Project Pegasus's base, and it ends with Fury rising to take aim. Joining us on the show today, we have a new guest to the show. It's Declan Craggs. Hey, Declan.
Hello.
Welcome.
We are thrilled to have you. You're kind of new in the movies by minute space, but you're going to be doing one of your own shows sometime soon. Isn't that right?
Yes, that is correct. I've been listening to Movies by Minute for ages, and I just thought, do you know what? I've got to do it. If I don't, I'll regret it probably the rest of my life.
You're not doing Tremors, are you? That's not...
I'm not doing Tremors.
That would be too much. That would be too much.
So, no, I'm not doing Tremors yet.
Yet.
So,
that's what I like to hear.
I'm going to be doing initially the first Scream movie.
Very timely.
And then we'll see how it goes. And assuming people don't hate me, I will continue the franchise.
Outstanding. Well, we don't hate you already.
That's right.
Excellent.
So we were talking about Minute 11 of the Avengers. Before we get started talking about this particular minute, which involves the end of this base, just to give us a sense of your history with the MCU and this particular film.
So in terms of the MCU, I think what year was it Iron Man came out?
That was 2008.
So I'd just left school. I remember I went to see it in the cinema, and I was about the right age. I was like 17. And I was incredibly geeky. You know, I was really into the X-Men films and all the cartoons and all of that. I never was big into the comics, but if I could watch it on a TV, I was happy. And then, so I've watched them, seen them all in the cinema, even to now. And yeah, the Avengers was one of those very exciting moments where they put many people I love in one place. So I was just, ecstatic at the fact there was an Avengers movie.
It's, it is big and bombastic for sure, and putting all these characters and then largely making it work where you have so many characters spearheading a film. And it feels like, they all actually are given a little bit of a chance to actually perform. So that was nice. Do you have a favorite of this particular group of Avengers?
As in character?
Yeah.
Probably Iron Man. I've always imagined if I was a superhero, I'd like to be a rich, egotistical billionaire. So maybe I relate.
Excellent. I like your thinking.
Aspirational. Yeah, that's right. maybe there's a social network you can buy in the process.
That's right. Well, we're coming into we're right at this is kind of the end of our inciting incident here in the film. We've got this base, the Joint Dark Energy Mission Western Division, which holds Project Pegasus, the NASA Space Radiation Facility, SHIELD's Accelerator Test Facility, all in this one space in the middle of nowhere. And this Tesseract incident that is brought upon by Loki creates a whole bunch of energy that gets released. And this is the final moments of this base as that Tesseract energy in our last minute exploded. I don't know. It's kind of an explosion. And now this entire base is collapsing, and we're coming in right as all of this is happening. We've seen Fury fly away, and Hill is still in the tunnel chasing Loki and Barton and Selvig, and Coulson is riding away with a truck full of troops. How is this action sequence play for you, Declan? Do you enjoy the way that everything's playing out in it?
Yeah, I quite enjoy it. I think there's a good amount of action. There's not sort of loads of dialogue there's no dialogue in this minute, but there's in the whole thing there's not too much dialogue, so you can just focus on the action. I quite enjoy it. The
base, I wonder. I mean, Project Pegasus we learn more about down the road, but the whole setup of the story at this point is that, and we don't fully know this because we're going to have this conversation in a little bit, but the whole idea is that the destruction of this base, which had been essentially started after the Puente Antiguo incident in Thor, when the destroyer came down, and they ended up, having discovered the Tesseract long ago. But with the destroyer coming down in Thor, the World Security Council kind of had Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. start looking into the Tesseract and figuring out what they could do with it as far as this dark energy, and also Phase 2. Phase 2 has been mentioned a few times, or really maybe only once by this point, and it's kind of really vague. I guess as an inciting incident, like, do you feel like you're kind of understanding what the whole point of this is, or does it just feel like the whole thing was just to get Loki here?
The whole thing? What do you mean the whole thing? The whole thing destroying this base?
Yeah, like they've introduced Phase 2. We've got the Tesseract energy that they're studying and stuff like that. But all of that is in here, but we're not really getting a lot out of it. So at this point, does it just seem like, oh, they just need to get Loki into the story to get things started?
Well, yeah, I think they need to get Loki into the story to get things started, but also it's an action movie and we need an action set piece. And I think opening on this big race to safety is a great way to do it. It feels authentic. It feels, I never once question, like, does this fit the narrative? Like, does this fit the plot of stuff that I understand? Because whether or not I understand Phase 1, Phase 2, I do understand what it's like to run from a natural disaster. And so
do you have personal experience with that?
I feel like I'm okay. I'm okay with that. And so, yeah, I think it makes sense. And the other thing I wanted to add, a couple of minutes ago, we were talking about they were loading up the trucks, and the way Maria Hill walks out, and the way that whole sequence was cut together as Loki stumbles into the back of this pickup truck, and all of that, it felt really clumsily edited in terms of showing us where all of these action elements are in the frame, in the location. The blocking felt clumsy to us. I don't get any of that in this minute. And looking at the parallelism of cars to helicopters, bringing the cars into the frame and moving out of the frame, it just works for me. Every one of the just sort of filmmaking elements, the editing elements in here just feel super competent to me. I'm never lost in space. I know what's going on. I know that Maria Hill's risking being crushed. I get where she is compared to Coulson et al., as they escape the tunnel. It just makes sense. I think this is a solid action escape minute. I rest my case.
Okay. My struggle with it is I end up, I don't know if part of my struggle with this minute, or just kind of this sequence, again, boils down to the fact that I don't know how important Maria Hill is to the story. We've only heard her name mentioned a few times, and it's just Hill. So if you're not familiar with the comics and you're not familiar, because we didn't get that alternate opening that really established who this character was, we're getting this character. And I mean, my sense is, I can't remember exactly when I saw this film, but my sense is that when we see the tunnel collapsing and Loki and Barton and Selvig make it out, and it looks kind of like her Jeep kind of gets buried in rubble, that she as a character was gone. And I didn't really care because I just didn't have any sense as to who she was. Did you know who Maria Hill was coming into this, Declan? Or was she, because I know she was a comic book character, but had she been in the cartoons at all? I don't know.
No, I don't think I knew her before. Because I rewatched it in preparation, the whole film, I'd forgotten that initially this was Maria Hill's first appearance. So watching it now, you have a connection to her because you've got other films where you've sort of been able to connect to her. But yeah, I'd forgotten that initially, when the Avengers movie came out, this was the first time she was in it. So she could have been a very minor character for all most people knew.
Yeah, and I feel like that ended up being a structural issue that I feel like they could have honestly cleaned up with maybe a reshoot, just to have an additional part of a conversation at the beginning where Fury is talking to her, and it's made more clear who this character is, because they never say her name until we're at this escape point, when he calls to her on the radio after he'd been shot, and he finally says Hill. And so that would be a clue for at least people who were familiar with Maria Hill from the comics. But otherwise, it's just this random character that he seems to be kind of telling to do things. And the fact that she kind of gets buried in rubble here, I'm just like, oh, well, I guess that's the end of that character. It just kind of feels like, the end of some bit player who didn't really have a prominent role.
Yeah, but in all fairness, to the movie by minute format, in less than 60 seconds, we're going to see that she survived.
No, yes, very true, very true. But again, I don't know if I really cared, because I didn't know who this character was, and that's the thing I think.
Now wait a minute. Wait just a minute. You're telling me that you didn't go into the Avengers knowing who Maria Hill was?
No, I hadn't read any comics with her. She was a comic book character that was somebody who had been kind of a more recent addition in line with S.H.I.E.L.D. and somebody who was vying for taking over from Nick Fury. But I had no idea who she was. And again, the fact that they never identify her in the first 10 minutes of the film, it makes it kind of tricky to figure that out, to figure out that she's somebody I'm supposed to be paying attention to.
But is it such a big deal that we what we do know is Fury has kind of an assistant. That's how she's introduced. She's a position of power, and she survives. And say you don't even know who Maria Hill was. It's Fury's assistant. Isn't that important enough? That's not enough character weight for you?
I guess maybe, but I guess it ends up feeling like, okay, is it another, I just don't know. Is it another Agent Coulson, or is it just somebody that they're setting up for us to kill off later in some way to kind of create a moment of empathy?
Speaking of somebody that is killed off later to create a moment of empathy.
Exactly. But again, that character is somebody that we have known for a number of films.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he was another one that was created as an artifact of the MCU, and I just find that it's okay to me, because, and I know that I might be one of those in the camp that's already biased toward Hill, because I knew the actor portraying the character so well because of How I Met Your Mother.
Right.
Exactly, right? So I felt like I was already invested in who this person was. And so when I found out that she was in the movie, I immediately went out and got my Maria Hill tattoo. And I renamed all my children to Hill. And so I think we're in good shape. I just don't want to overstate too much the value of these first 10 minutes in establishing who this character is, because the movie hasn't had, in all fairness to the film, let's give it time to play out what role she serves to Fury.
Yeah. And that's, we are going to be doing that here moving forward. Yeah. As the film progresses, we'll get a sense as to who she is. And like you said, we'll see in a later minute that she did survive, and there's more of her to come. And so we'll see how she ends up playing out. So I'm curious about that. But in the scope of this story, I guess I wish that I guess all I'm saying is that I wish that I had a better connection to her as an important character in Marvel lore. So when this whole thing is happening, I would have had a sense that, oh, this is somebody I should make sure I care about, that she's not getting buried by rubble.
Well, and I don't want to at all dismiss any of this to the fact that women in this movie are generally not handled great. There's a lot of men in this movie and one really strong female character, and we had an opportunity with Hill to make a great, strong female character, and the movie doesn't do it, doesn't commit to that. And that's just, it feels dated to me in that regard, but that's not that I don't want to, I don't have a problem with Maria Hill in this case.
Okay.
So I just wanted to touch on the car crash itself.
Yeah.
Yes.
No way would you survive that.
You mean a mountain falling on top of you in an open Jeep?
Just the amount of rubble.
But Declan, she has a little blood on her forehead. Isn't that enough?
On an open top Jeep.
Right.
What? I watched that and I thought, that's a stretch. It's a stretch.
Right.
And that Jeep, no airbag. It's not up to regulation.
Right.
Yeah, right? The military was skimping.
Yes, for sure. That's really funny.
That's actually a good point, because that was something else that I couldn't help but notice, is that she kind of gets buried, and it feels like the collapse of the tunnel conveniently stops exactly where she happens to be in the tunnel, which made me actually feel like, oh, she's right on the edge of the tunnel. She's like just making it out. But then
Andy, it's worse than that.
But
it's worse than that.
She's deep in it, but then there's a whole bunch of tunnel after that, because then we see the Hummer escape. And so, yeah.
The problem is, and the spoiler for tomorrow, the rocks fall and essentially stop at the gear shift of the Jeep. Like, her
Right.
seat is fine.
Yeah.
But everything else is completely destroyed.
Is that a collapse ex machina?
Yeah,
Is that what
collapse ex machina. That's exactly what that is.
Another question that I have for you, Declan. So in this whole opening, this is really our first chance to get some of Clint Barton, an Avenger, one of our team that we haven't really seen. I know we've seen briefly in Thor, but really we have not had a lot of time with Hawkeye up until this start of this film. I know there's this whole thing with him being possessed, or like taken over mentally by Loki at the beginning of the film. But outside of that, which I have issues with, do you like the way that this doesn't actually have any of our Avengers in it other than him? Like, or would you like to have had other people involved? Like, should Iron Man been here, for example?
No.
No, okay.
No, I like that it's Shield. I'm a sort of, I really like the idea of Shield. And when they brought the Shield series out, I was well happy. So I'm more than happy with just scenes of Shield in it, and I think also the minute, obviously I know that's what it's about, but the minute you add your superheroes, you take away some of the risk.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah.
So with that the Shield agents aren't going to be much threat against Loki, so that you sort of watch it and you think, oh, there's a risk that everyone actually could die here.
Yeah, well, I think that's a really great point, especially because in this minute we have Loki taking out a helicopter that, had Iron Man been here, would have been saved, right? This is a helicopter that actually crashes in the opening 11 minutes of this movie that in a superhero movie would otherwise probably have been resolved somehow. So I'm with you. I like the Shield element, and was such a fan of Agents of Shield, and then it got to spacey. And
oh, I know. oh God.
I know.
Try not to bring that up again, because you'll just make me sad.
I'm sorry. It's too soon. It's too soon. We're still in mourning.
How many seasons had there been? It was just the pilot actually came out. Was it right after this? I was trying to remember if the pilot came out before this or
it was after. I'm pretty sure
it was after this,
because it was based on when Phil Coulson gets killed and then he's resurrected.
Yeah, that's right.
All spoilers.
Yeah. For some reason in my head, my brain was telling me that it starts right before this, but then he's killed, and then they had to write something into the show to explain that. But yeah, you're right. It's all afterward. Network television is
it's rough for you.
More of a challenge for me. It's like one of those
hurdle.
shows. Well, it's one of those shows that I would watch, and I'm like, there were 10 episodes of filler through this season. And they could have done this whole thing in a perfect little 12 episode series. But no, it has to be 23 because it's network TV. And oh God, there were some slogs. And I still haven't finished the show. I really was trying.
If you haven't finished it at this point, I think it's safe to say you may never.
Yeah,
right.
I think it's very much is.
I have a hard time imagining that Quantumania is going to do a lot of season 7 callbacks to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I will ably eat my hat if they do.
Yeah, right. One note that I have that we very briefly talked about when we were talking about the location for this exterior, how it's that high school outside of Albuquerque.
Right.
And we had mentioned that they digitally added in all of the radar dishes and everything. This is a great, as this destruction happens over the course of this minute, and you see all these radar dishes collapsing into the ground. I was taken by how similar it looks to, what is the field that was used in Contact, where it has all these radar dishes that's in New Mexico? Do you remember what the name of that?
Oh.
It struck me that it's I felt like, oh, are they very specifically trying to make it look like that, as if this base is like maybe at that research facility or something? Because there are so many huge radar dishes here, and I never really thought about that before. Yeah, until I was watching this this minute to prep for this episode, and I kept seeing all these aerial shots. I'm like, it really looks like Jodie Foster might be sitting down by one of these, and of course now buried under the rubble. But it struck me that they might have been going for that. I mean, it is obviously kind of a southwestern desert location. Does that seem like that might be a thing that they were looking at for this?
I hadn't thought about it until you just said it, but now it's, of course, canon, and I'm so sorry Jodie Foster lost her life in the filming of this movie. Buried underneath the very large array in Socorro.
That's very large
Mexico.
Array. Socorro, yeah. Right. It is a striking location, obviously, and it works really well in context of that film. But just with all these satellite dishes, it's hard to not think that they were looking at doing something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems very NASA-y, right?
Totally. And I mean, they are stunning, this array of telescopes. It doesn't quite hold a candle to the size of the very large array. I'm looking at images of it, and it's very, very large, as what it should have been, VVLA. But I do get the idea, and it also plants the seed around the work that they're doing around dark energy and space stuff. Right? They continue to hammer home the point that S.H.I.E.L.D. is now in the space business, which goes to the whole Phase 2 conversation we're going to have later. Right? Things that fly are now, and fly very, very high, are now S.H.I.E.L.D.'s purview.
Well, let's just make sure we're talking about which Phase 2, not Phase 2 in the film.
Right, not Phase 2 in the film. We're not there yet. But
Phase 2 in the films.
Of the films, yeah, right.
Very confusing. Very confusing.
I know. It's a lot.
It is a lot. So there's a shot as the base is collapsing of Fury through the helicopter window as he's flying away, where it looks like he's a little teary-eyed. Do you two have that sense that he's a little like emotional about losing this base? I mean, it's right at the beginning of the minute, about 5 seconds in.
Yeah, I remember seeing him and thinking, oh, he looks a bit moody. I wonder if it's because his big shield base has just collapsed.
Or is he thinking, damn, we were in partnership with NASA on this. We're going to owe them a ton of money.
I was wondering about the insurance premiums. I'm thinking, oh, they're going to struggle after this.
Totally wish we had separated some of these research functions into different buildings. Really wish we had done that. I don't know if I see that. He does look, I think he looks weary. Maybe that's teary-eyed. It could just be wet. Just like, I don't know if the problem is I have such trouble imagining Nick Fury as like a crier. I don't imagine he's the guy who shows his emotion through tears and probably just gets mad, right? So I struggle a little bit with imbuing him with tears of sadness.
Maybe the wind was in his eyes.
Could be.
He's in a helicopter.
When you just have one eye to use, yeah, you can't squint that one very well. You still have to keep it open to see. So, poor guy. That's one of the plight of having an eye patch, I guess.
The plight of the one-eyed man.
Now, all right. So, Declan, what are your thoughts on Loki as the villain? We get a little bit of him here. He's escaping in the Jeep, and then we get one of those fantastic blasts from his scepter as he takes down the helicopter. And again, when he does it, it's like he's got this wicked kick from the scepter, which I love the way that Tom Hiddleston kind of portrays that. But what do you think of him as the villain? Do you like him as the big bad for the movie?
I do, yeah. I like Loki. I like Loki, but specifically, I like Tom Hiddleston's portrayal of Loki. I think is what really does it. If that was done by potentially another actor, that might not have, the portrayal of Loki may not have came off, as it does now.
Right. Like Richard E. Grant, perhaps.
Don't even with that right now. Don't even.
No, I love him as Loki. He was a delight. He is my
Richard
favorite thing, honestly, about
wrong.
The entirety of the Loki TV series. Seeing
that is another
Richard
problem
E. Grant,
I have with you. I can't believe you're going to pull. You,
I'm just saying, him in
Nope.
that fantastic Loki outfit in that show, like my favorite thing of that whole show. I loved him so much in that moment. He was great.
It should have been the crocodile version, shouldn't it, in this film?
it really should have been. And of course, it should have been Throg playing the role of Thor. Right?
That would have really made the Avengers as a team very interesting.
Very interesting.
Oh man. All right. Well, the base collapses. Coulson and his team, they make it out just on the lip as the whole thing is going down, and he seems very Coulson. The shots of Coulson seem very casual as they drive away, like literally right on the edge of what's collapsing into the earth. But he's thrilled. He's out. Hill is buried, and then of course we have this helicopter takedown, which is kind of fun to see, and I really do enjoy. Well, I should say I feel bad that we never get even a line out of the helicopter pilot, but I guess it doesn't matter because he goes down with the copter, and I love that Fury is tough enough to just jump out of the copter and make it down, which is very fun to see. So this is kind of the end of the battle between the copter and the Hummer. And so now we have this minute ending with Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury rising to his feet to start taking shots at the Hummer as it drives away.
Do you think the scene with the helicopter getting shot down would have been better if we would have heard the pilot screaming for his life?
100%.
Yeah.
Gruesome and awesome. Yes.
What we should have had
100%.
in the moment when Fury came running out the door to get into the copter, just in the last minute before the whole thing goes up, we should have had a very brief conversation between him and the pilot, establishing like this lifetime relationship between the two of them, and how this person has always been there for him to always pull him out of these scrapes at the last minute, and
sort of godfather to his kids, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the whole thing happens here where the chopper goes down, and that's the end.
See, I love that you're doing that as you're doing this as a bit, but really what you're saying is that's the scene that you wanted with Maria Hill in the beginning. Like that's what you wanted before she's covered in rubble. Before
she's crushed by the entire mountain falling on her, or at least the back of her Jeep.
Yeah, you get it.
It's so fun. I will say the sound design in this minute is fantastic. I love when the chopper goes down. And I just got to say, the effects on the chopper sequence, as it flies down, you got the smoke swirling around it at night. I mean, it looks beautiful. Like everything about this chopper crash is very effective. And then as it goes down, safe with Fury safely away from it, I love the way it rolls, and you get this thwopping of the propeller blades into the ground as they kind of get chunked off. It's a very exciting way to kind of end this chopper crash.
Thwopping is what you just said.
Thwopping into the ground.
I don't want to litigate this too much, but it sounds more like a whomping to me. Whoomp, 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 whoomp. Whoomp. All right. Wow. We'll save that for the community.
Is it a thwop or a whoop? Declan, do you have a vote, or do you have a third option? I
don't know why you would want to increase this conflict between us, but go ahead.
I don't want to make anyone angry, so right. I'm gonna stay impartial.
We won't like you when you're angry. Is that what you're saying?
Right. That's right.
I'm worried I might not like you when you're angry. That's
noted.
And as a guest, I shall stay impartial.
There's a certain decorum.
Yeah,
right.
But I do, I love the chopper scene. I think they could have easily done it with him just jumping out, and then you don't see the helicopter anymore. But they sort of really focused on it for that brief period of time.
Yeah,
which really I think added to the scene a lot.
Very much. Does it? Okay, so we have Fury firing at the Hummer as it's driving away. We get this cutaway to the Jeep as the windshield right in front of Clint kind of shatters. And is he aiming for Loki? Is he trying to just take the Jeep out? Is he actually aiming for Barton? Do you think that he would, what do you think of Fury's mindset? Is he the sort of person, knowing that Barton is has been mentally taken over by Loki along with Selvig, would he be willing to kill him at this point?
I think so.
And is that what he's trying to do? You think he would?
I think Fury's pretty brutal, if he had to be, to make those tough decisions.
Yeah.
And I don't imagine that Fury's a bad shot either. So I think if you shoot the driver, then the vehicle's going to come to a stop. So I imagine that's what he was intending to do.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what's interesting about this. When you look at where the bullet hits the car, it really does look like it hits the car right at Renner. I always look at that because then it cuts to the interior shot and the bullet feels like it's hitting a slightly different place. It's good. We don't want Clint Barton to be killed, but also, and we need the miss. But to your point, is Fury a better shot than that? Certainly. I mean, maybe that implies that he'd be as good a shot as Barton is himself, which is not true. But it is something I'd look at.
It's an interesting way to play the scene because I like the idea. I mean, to your point, Declan, that Fury does what it takes, and if it means that he has to shoot Barton in order to stop this potential, global threat, then he's willing to do that. I think that's a really interesting element to him as a character that we see here. But also to your point, Pete, the way that those two shots are constructed back to back, the exterior when it looks like it's essentially almost hitting Clint, and then the interior where it looks like it's just completely past him. It can be a little confusing. Again, it's really fast cutting. It's hard to really tell. And obviously, as the audience, the Jeep keeps going or the Hummer keeps going. We get a sense that obviously they get away. But I don't know. It gives us a better sense of the way that Fury needs to be in an action sequence, which, I mean, this is his first opportunity to do something like this in one of these films.
Yeah, I like the idea of Samuel L. Jackson jumping out of more stuff.
And being willing to shoot one of his own team members.
Yeah.
If that's what it takes. It'll be interesting to kind of continue this conversation as the team gets built and they start having more conversations and, seeing where things go. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, I don't know if I have anything else for this particular minute, unless either of you have any particular moments.
I do.
Yeah.
I do have something else, Andy, and I'm going to address this to Declan.
Okay.
In our notes, Andy has a controversial line that he's put in our notes of things to talk about. Quote, Coulson looks like he's acting. Now, I know Andy and I have been really at odds with each other around many things in this minute so far, but do you have any opinion on Coulson's acting in this minute? Is he believable to you?
Well, and I should clarify. I should have said Clark.
Clark Gregg, as past guest on the Marvel Movie Minute, are we sure we want to pick that particular scab?
So that's what I was going to clarify, whether you were wondering whether the character was acting or the actor of the character was acting.
Because that's next level if Coulson is acting.
I've got to perform for these troops.
He just seemed like normal Phil Coulson to me.
Okay. All right. That's good. That's good. I don't know that we need to say any more. I mean, Andy will get it. He'll come around.
It's similar to his shot of him when the ground is shaking, when they feel that first tremor inside the base, and he's got that look on his face like, oh, the ground is shaking. It's similar here. It's like I can see the director saying, okay, now you're watching the whole base collapse behind you as you drive away. And there are grips shaking the vehicle to make it look like it's bouncing along the ground. And action. And we just see him looking. And then he kind of, at the very end of his look, he kind of looks down like, there it all goes. I don't know. I feel like maybe what I should say is I feel like he needed better directing in that moment. How's that? Is that better to say?
That's much better. That we can have a field day with those kinds of comments. You bet.
I'm just sitting here thinking whether I'm going to be a guest on any more of your shows, knowing how much you hate Phil Coulson, which deeply offends me. No wonder you haven't got through S.H.I.E.L.D.
There you go.
I love Phil Coulson. I love him. I do.
Declan and I are going to do a spin-off podcast that's just Coulson by minute.
Coulson, woof. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'll let you two take a crack at that one. 7 seasons, network seasons. Oh, man. Well, it has been a thrill having you join us today, Declan. Thank you so much for chatting with us about this particular minute of the movie.
Yeah, no, it's great. Any opportunity to talk about something nerdy, I'm in.
Outstanding.
Fantastic. Now, your show is getting underway, so do you have any sense as to kind of a timeline for it?
So we are hoping to start recording end of February. I think we're probably looking at some point in March for the starting of the releasing episodes. Being new to it, it's going to take me a little bit longer to get my feel for things and get it right and not sound rubbish. So yeah, I think we're probably looking at mid-March for release.
Fantastic.
Outstanding.
Well, keep us updated. We will make sure that we share the release with everyone that tunes in here, so they're all aware, and people will be tuning in to what is it? Just going to be the Scream Minute, or what are you calling it? Do you have any
Scream Movie Minute?
Scream Movie Minute.
Scream Movie Minute.
There it is. Well, we are thrilled to have you, and certainly hope to get you in down the road. And I guess that's it for today. So we'll be back tomorrow to talk about minute 12. So, Pete, thanks as always.
Specifically tomorrow, Andy, Marvel heroic typefaces.
That's right. Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Message to the World by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.